Do you get anxious when competing? I think everyone does. Everyone does, but it's just about, like, what level, what volume. Like, you know, there's some people who you put them on a stage and they get, the anxiety is too much or whatever, you know, like, or they start you know, you gotta, the thing is, like, you gotta learn how to control it. You gotta learn how you deal with it personally. You know, like, how does that manifest? You get nervous energy, right? So for me, I start to, like, I get really, like, fidgety. I have certain tells, you know? I definitely be, like, I scratch my mustache gets itchy. Shit like that, you know? Or, like, mustache gets itchy, or, like, the chin scratch, whatever it is. It's about how that energy manifests itself, being conscious of it, and then just telling yourself, you know, just chill, dude. Do I still get anxious in tournament? Absolutely. But the thing is, in this situation, dude, we're at a local. It's a bunch of fucking, like, you know, come on, man. Like, we're underground, just playing with no stakes. Playing with no stakes. But to me, I keep telling myself, I'm like, this is my Evo, you know? And I feel like if I treat it that way, then I can kind of desensitize myself to feeling that anxiety and that pressure, you know? Put it on me. Because in my mind, it's like, if I can play this like it's Evo or something like that, when the real thing comes, even though there might be more people watching or whatever like that, you're at least on some level desensitized to the mental pressure that you put on yourself, you know? And sometimes that can be just as bad as the external pressure. Look at fucking Speed Kicks, man. I retired. Oh, by the way, I'm at the fucking, like, okay, bro, whatever you say. All of a sudden, without that pressure, I think a lot of it's just pressure on himself. Internal pressure. That's a thing too, man. You know? You're playing against somebody that you think you're better than, and all of a sudden they're beating your ass. And now you're like, oh shit, like, I can't lose to this motherfucker. But then that pressure starts to build, and that becomes its own anxiety, you know? That's the thing. The thing is, like, you gotta be conscious about, like, how you deal with it, and then you have to have solutions for that, you know? Like, if I get really excited, something, you know, and this is, like, a little bit of my history, too. How many of you guys know me from Guilty Gear Xrd? This is many moons ago at this point. But we used to run a first to 10 exhibition league series out of Mikado. And so what a lot of the guys, you know, you're used to playing in arcade, maybe like long casual sets or something like that, or like you're used to a first to 2 or first to 1 tournament set, single elimination, you know, one and done or whatever, right? But for a lot of the players at that time, playing in long set like that, sit down, we're going to play a first to 10, that's a different kind of pressure. That's a different kind of mentality. So what you notice for a lot of the players is, like, maybe some of them would break down mentally but towards the end of the set. They're not used to playing with the concentration dialed up that high, with that many people huddled around them watching like that, with commentary right behind them, with it being really hot in that environment like that, right? So every player had to have their way of dealing with that. And, you know, I'll just give you an example. Like, Haken was, in my mind, Haken, Mochi, he's like number 1, number 2 soul in that game. All time, in my opinion. Like, definitely top 3, for sure. But what was crazy to me was watching him in these sets where he would be going, and it's like in a long set like that, in that game, in that environment, you can go look it up. It was called the Mika 10 series. That was honestly one of the starts for me with commentary, to be honest with you. And it's like, in that environment like that, for him, the way it manifested was he would just start shaking. You could tell sweat, shaking and stuff like that, right? So what did he do? That motherfucker just started smoking in the middle of the set. You know, every 5 games, we take the break or side switch or whatever, right? In the course of one first to 10 set, it felt like between every game, that motherfucker would take a deep-ass drag of a cigarette. Like, he would let the timer hit 69 seconds, and he would have, like, it was like the Chappelle Show skit. There's, like, you know, like, ATP, it's basically like that, right? He's just hitting that shit, and we're like, it's the end of the set. If it's like a 10-9 score, we're looking at the table, and like, bro, this motherfucker went through a whole fucking carton. What happened here? Damn, that's a tight strat. Well, I'm not telling everybody to take up smoking or whatever, right? But for him, the nicotine, he's one of those guys. He's like Solid Snake, right? He was one of those guys where it's just like, you know, the nicotine calms him down, I guess. So it's like, if you're a terribly nervous person like that, or terribly anxious, for him, that was his solution to get through the set. And he would barely get through them, by the way. And then we'd look, and this motherfucker went through like a fucking cart, you know? Not a pack, like half a cart. We're talking like, I'm dead serious when I was like, he was at one point double fisting cigarettes. I remember that very clearly. But like on the other side, right? Nage, when he would play the set, he noticed too, you know, like mental composure would break down, and especially with the character that he plays at high level, you need very high levels of situational awareness with that character. I don't know about in Stride, but in Xrd, that was Xrd and very much before Stride. But that's the hallmark of that character at a high level. So over the course of a long set, that is very mentally draining. You got to think characters like Dhalsim, like where you're using your reactions and you need very, very strong reads, reactions, but then also like awareness, you know? Over the course of a long set like that, it's very mentally draining. So what he started to do was, when he realized that he was losing focus, at first he said he tried chewing gum, right? Just to have something, but then he realized like his jaw would get tired, and like the gum would lose flavor, but he'd still be in the middle of a match and he couldn't spit it out, so he'd just be chewing up like tasteless gum. It runs out of flavor too quickly. He tried eating chocolate. He said that didn't work because then the aftertaste stuck. But he found Ramune. So what he would do is, he would get to that point where he could feel some mental fatigue, and he would pop a Ramune. So it's like a quick, Sprite-like taste, but then it quickly disappears. And what that was for him was, that was part of the process of like, okay, I'm cool. We're reaching the end of the set now, you know? For him, that was like, it was like a reminder to his entire body of just like, we're about to punch this through. Let's wrap this shit up. That was his solution, you know? And to my knowledge, he was bringing that shit to every tournament he went to overseas and shit too, you know? Because, you know, especially like an EVO or something like that, where it's stretched out over 3 days. You gotta think of stuff like that. So it's like, I think solutions for stuff like that, this isn't a fighting game talk either. Jaha's here, he can tell you. This is like a sports, this is just all the shit. But everybody's different, so you can't just be like, that's what's hard about that question. You're like, how do you deal with nerves or whatever? Everybody's different. Everybody rides off of, there's some people like who can take that pressure and that stress, and they like it, they ride it, you know? Yeah, Marshawn Lynch with the Skittles, exactly, it's the same shit. So the thing is, I would say you got to get creative, you got to experiment. If you still get nervous, if you still find yourself really nervous, really anxious, that's not unique, dude. Everybody does that. That's a part of competing in something. Not even competition, that's a part of just doing something. That's one reason why having local events, having regional events is so beneficial, because you can go and with, you know, maybe some stakes or low stakes or some stakes, you can put yourself in that position to further understand you as a player, as a competitor, as a person. And then you can experiment with ways to solve your personal stress solution, you know? Do you understand how you respond physically? Do you understand how you respond mentally to that situation, to that stress, to that pressure? And part of being able to understand how you respond to that, how you personally respond to it, is you have to put yourself in that situation. Then you have to get creative with solutions to finding how you can deal with it. You know, you got to put yourself in that situation. It's one of those things, man. You don't get, listen, you don't get in shape for something by doing other shit and then be like, okay, and then I'm gonna challenge this. No, bro, you got to put yourself in there.